Y'all ever heard that saying, I got 99 problems and the PLS manipulatives are literally every last one of them? No? Just me? I feel like I hear that all the time. Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jasmine if you didn't know, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to administer and score the PLS-5. So let's go ahead and get right into the specs of the test. The PLS-5 stands for Preschool Language Scales 5th Edition, PLS-5. It is meant to test ages 0 all the way to 7 years and 11 months. It specifically tests expressive and receptive language, and it also has an articulation screener as well. Remember to leave this test to the professionals. You can administer this assessment if you are an SLP or an SLPA, and you can analyze and score this assessment if you are an SLP. Now let's talk about what you're gonna need in order to administer this assessment. You're gonna need your manipulatives, your administration and scoring manual. You're also gonna need your record form and your picture manual. So now that you know what you need, let's talk about the rules and directions of this particular test. So let's talk about the basal first. The basal is the amount of questions you have to get correct before you can move on to the rest of the assessment. So for the sake of this video, let's say our child is 3 years and 5 months. So I would find the starting area for 3 years and 5 months, and I have to get 3 correct before I can move on to the rest of the test. If for any reason I don't get 3, let's say that your patient gets 2 correct, instead of going right back to the question before your starting point, you're going to want to go all the way back to the previous starting point for the younger age and start there until you get 3 correct. If my starting point is 3-5, that means my first question is number 27. If my client gets 27 and 28 right, but not number 29, I'm going to go all the way back to the previous starting point, which is starting age 2-6 to 2-11, and that's going to be question 23. So you want to go all the way back to the previous starting point of the last age and then start from there. You're going to keep doing that until you get your basal. Now let's talk about your ceiling. That's the amount of questions you get wrong before you end testing. So after you get 6 questions that have a score of 0, that's when you're going to stop administering that part of the test. The last things I want you to remember is that your starting ages are going to be in bigger letters in purple, and then the materials that you're going to need for that set of questions or that particular questions are written right below it in the materials section. Also, this test has both auditory comprehension, receptive language, and expressive communication, expressive language, right next to each other. But always remember that auditory comprehension is on the left and expressive comprehension is on the right, so you don't get confused. Now let's start with the testing. Remember, our patient is 3 years and 5 months. So I'm specifically going to start with auditory comprehension, and that starting point for 3 years and 5 months is found on page 10. In our materials section, it says that we're going to need a teddy bear, 3 cups, box with lid, small pitcher, spoon, bowl, and 8 blocks. I'm going to tell you right now, there's no particular way in which you can get these materials. Honestly, there's no best way to get the materials. I learned to get the materials a little bit faster the more I administer the test. So the more you practice and the more patients you have using this particular protocol, the more comfortable you'll get with all the materials that you'll need for a certain section. So I have all of my materials right here. In purple under the materials section, that is going to be your prompt. So you'll read the prompts for each section, all written in purple. And if your patient gets it right, you can put a check, and if they don't, you can put an X. Whatever you'd like to put is totally up to you. Just make sure you can differentiate between correct and incorrect. I'm going to continue to do that on the auditory comprehension side until I reach my ceiling. Now that I'm ready to do expressive communication, I'm going to find the starting point for 3 years and 5 months on the expressive communication side, which is found specifically on page 7. For this particular question, my materials are a little bit different. It says that I need the picture manual, specifically pages 50 through 52. So now instead of using anything from the box, I have my picture manual to continue the questions. Again, you're going to continue to assess, remembering your basal and your ceiling rules from earlier in the video. So now that we're done administering both the auditory comprehension and the expressive communication portion of the test, we're going to go back to the front page of the manual and fill in our numbers. So for the sake of this test, we're going to say that the last auditory comprehension item that we administered was number 40, and there were 7 zeros in total on this part of the test. We're also going to say for expressive communication that item 52 was the last one that we administered, and there were 6 total zeros on the test. And now in the gray areas, we're going to find our raw score by subtracting each of those numbers. And now that we have both raw scores, we're also going to come down to the AC raw score plus EC raw score and fill that in. So now that we have all of our raw scores for this assessment, it's time for us to go to the administrative and scoring manual so that we can find our scores. Specifically, it starts on page 125. So on the top right hand corner of every page is where you're going to find the age of your client. So remember, our client is 3 years and 5 months. When you're looking at the scoring, remember that one table is either for auditory comprehension or expressive communication. So make sure that you're looking at the right table to get the right score, and that can be found in the dark gray area of each table. So because our raw score for the auditory comprehension portion of this assessment was 33, we're going to scroll down to 33 and over to the standard score, which is 84. And if you'd like, you can also pick a confidence interval. I'm going to pick 90%, and you can also pick the percentile. So we're going to do the same thing with expressive communication. So our expressive communication raw score was 46. So we're going to go all the way down to 46 over to the standard score, which is 120. We're going to pick our confidence interval. I'm going to do 90% again, and then I'm also going to write down the percentile rank. And you can also include the percentile rank confidence intervals if you would like. So now I'm going to leave the manual open, but I'm going to go back to the first page of our record form, and I'm going to fill in the standard scores for both of our sections. So now you can see that there are some places where we can fill in some more information. So we can put the AC standard score over here in the white as well, which is 84. And then we can do the EC standard score as well, which is 120. So if we add both of those together, the standard score total is 204. Now what we're going to want to do is go to page 162 in the manual so that we can find the total language standard score. For the total language standard score, you're not specifically looking for the age of your client because it encompasses all ages. So you're just looking for the sum of both standard scores that you found. And for us specifically, 204 is going to be a standard score of 102. And I'm going to scroll over as well and get my confidence interval and my percentile rank. And I'm also going to go back to the record form and fill that in. So now let's go over to the score summary section. As you can see, there's a place to put the standard scores for both the auditory comprehension and expressive communication, as well as the total language score. So if you fill those in, you can then find where they go on the scale, which gives you kind of a visual to what those scores are and if they are above average, average, or below average. So as you can see on the record form, there are still some sections that we have yet to fill in. There's the discrepancy comparison, and that kind of compares whether expressive language and receptive language are significantly different. And if that's something that you're interested in finding, you can go to page 169 and fill in those values. There's also the supplemental measures. So there's the articulation screening that I told you about. There's also a language sample checklist and a home communication questionnaire. And those are all things that come along with the assessment. So if that's something else that you're interested in giving to get some additional information, you can put that information on the front page as well. Lastly is the growth scales value section of the assessment. And that's if you are giving this assessment over multiple times, can you find the growth over time? What is their differences in scores that you can see from giving it at different intervals. Lastly, there's also the age equivalent that you can use in the back of the book. I don't personally use age equivalents because I don't find them significant in finding information specific for your child that you are providing therapy for or assessing. But if that's something that you want to use, again, it is in the back of the manual and you can use that as well. All right, guys, I know that administering and scoring assessments can be difficult and daunting, but don't worry, you got it. If you are a speech-language pathologist or a speech-language pathologist assistant and there's another assessment that you want me to teach you how to administer and score, feel free to leave those down in the comments below. If you want to say hi, you have questions about something else, you have other videos that you want me to make, you know where to leave all of those things right down below. But until my next video, peace.